To start with, I'd like to just explain the way I'm setting up my paints and my palette. I have taped down my grid, and I have labeled red, red, orange, orange, yellow, yellow, orange, just on the very top and on the bottom, so all the colors of the color wheel. And here I am about to place down my paints. I learned this technique and it just sort of changed my life. You take a paper towel and fold it up, get it wet, place it down onto your palette, and then you squeeze your paints on top of the wet paper towel. And this can keep your paints wet for, let's say, 1 or 2 hours while you're working. I mean, of course it will still kind of dry up on top if you don't just sprinkle a little water on it every now and again, but this helps your paint stay wet so you're not always applying and it's not always drying out when you're working on it, especially when you're working on something that takes a long time, such as this. Now, the colors I'm using are Cadmium Red, Cadmium Yellow Light, and Cerulean Blue. These colors are very opaque. They are nice and warm, and I feel like the blue isn't too cool or too warm. The red is just a nice solid red. It's not too orangey or too violet. I know that like a alizarin crimson is a little too cool. It has a little too much blue in it. And the yellow is just a nice warm yellow. The music we are listening to is called Ronda alla Turca from Mozart. I'm pretty sure I won't get copyrighted for it. I'm pretty sure this classical music is free domain. Nobody's getting any royalties off of it anymore. I guess I'll find out eventually if it's bad or not to use it. I guess I could have looked it up, but I just think that this song really fits what I'm trying to do here with just kind of showing you kind of a visual ASMR with the mixing of the paints and getting all these colors. This song is just really fast paced and very fun, light and happy, and I have a lot of fun, painting and mixing paints. Is just a really strong aesthetic for me. It really makes me happy and I find it beautiful. And about the music thing, what would you rather have listening to in the background with a video like this? This? Or this? It's really no contest. Maybe you have figured out what I am trying to do here. I have lined up the page or the paper into a grid, and I've put the rainbow order on the top and on the bottom, starting from red and going to red violet at the bottom right. And I am mixing the complementary colors. So red is a complementary of green. So red is straight from the tube, and then green is mixed with the blue and the yellow with equal parts of blue and yellow. I have already made a full transition from orange to blue, and after I finish these purples here, I'm going to start filling in all of the middle sections. I take a very long time to fill in these swatches of colors. If I just got a little more practice, I think I would be able to fill in each section with just maybe 4 swipes, so that I can cover all of the corners in just one swipe up, and then pick up more paint and turn 90 degrees, one swipe to the right, one swipe down, and one swipe left. I think I got a little faster, and I kind of understood how the palette felt, or how the paint was feeling underneath the knife of the palette. I think I got better as I went. Maybe now would be a good time to talk about the do's and don'ts of mixing paint. The biggest thing to avoid is adding too much water to your paints. In the very, very beginning, I had 2 of these sorts of exercises. One with the, is my example for no, don't do this, and one for yes, do this. The first time I did this exercise, I treated the paints like watercolor. I added way too much water. I was afraid of my paints getting dry, and I just thinned down my paints way too much. What you want to avoid is being able to see the paper underneath the paint. You want to do your best to just cover the space evenly with nice, kind of just thick, juicy paint. It should kind of keep the consistency of toothpaste and not be a watercolor. If you want to use watercolor, use watercolors. Don't treat your acrylics like watercolors. Unless you don't have watercolors. No, if you're using acrylic paint, make it thick and juicy. Don't treat it like watercolor. Don't use water. Only use water if your paints are getting dry. Don't use it to help you mix paints. Just mix your paints quickly. I know that I sped up my video, so it looks like I'm a demon mixing these paints at lightning speed, but seriously, do not overuse water. So here I'm kind of showing you my process of mixing 2 secondary colors. I think that is blue-green. Yeah, because there's a lot of blue and just a tiny bit of yellow to get that green out of that blue. And I'm using... Oh wait, are these tertiary colors? No, yeah, these are tertiary colors. Blue-green and red-orange. And then I'm just gradually kind of mixing them together at different consistencies, or at different kind of fractions or amounts of each color. Here I just sort of mix a nice in-between neutral color. I think it's really fun to see all the different neutrals that come out of this exercise, with all the different complementaries blending together. You can see that some of the browns look a little more kind of like a pea, kind of a green, and then this, I think this red here is very lovely. It's kind of a rust, kind of a brick color. You may have noticed that in the middle of this video, just a couple seconds ago, I got a new palette out. Well, not a new palette. See, what I'm using is, it's like parchment paper, but it's specifically for mixing paints. And once you're kind of filled up all of the parchment paper, you just kind of crumple it up and throw it away and just get a new one. So I got a new one because if I mix paint over a dried area of paint, then the little flecks of paint kind of break off into your new paint, and I want to avoid mixing any unintentional colors as much as possible. I really want my colors to be saturated, or to be very saturated, desaturated. Saturated is the word I was looking for. I just looked it up actually. It means a very bright and intense color. Here's my bad example from a couple years ago, and here is my good one. And here is the same thing with the black and white filter, just for fun. Helps you compare the values. You can probably see the differences, but let me explain the bad one. I used too much water. Again, I use it like watercolor, so you can still see the paper coming through. There's little white specks where I didn't quite get into the corners. I was using a brush and not a palette knife. The dark colors are just very, very dark, almost black. Now here's my good one. The colors are much more vibrant or saturated. The neutrals are also very nice and appealing.